I still remember the exact moment I realized everything was falling apart. It was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, the day I proposed. We were on our honeymoon, somewhere tropical and beautiful, the kind of place that's supposed to make you forget everything else. The air was thick and humid, the scent of salt and flowers mixing with sunscreen. I had the ring in my pocket all day, shaking slightly from nerves, my palms slick with sweat. She said yes, of course, her eyes shining, and I felt like I was floating, like nothing could ruin this. But then that night, lying in our hotel room with the moonlight creeping through the curtains, I found the texts. I wasn't snooping, I was just trying to get my phone to check the weather. I'd left it charging on the bedside table, and that's when I saw the message from him. His name, his words. "Can't wait to see you tonight," it read. A simple line, but it hit me like a punch in the gut. My stomach dropped, and I felt cold all over, like I'd been dunked in icy water. I scrolled through her messages, and it was worse than I imagined. Flirtation, promises, plans, way more than just friendly banter. She told him she loved the way he looked at her, how she wanted more, how she was tired of hiding it. I read every word in stunned silence. My head spun. I wanted to scream, to wake her up and demand answers, but I froze. My fingers trembled as I stared at her phone, the evidence screaming at me. I could feel my pulse pounding in my ears. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a misunderstanding. Betrayal. When I finally confronted her, she lied. She looked me straight in the eye and said it was just a mistake, that it didn't mean anything, that she loved me. I remember gripping her shoulders hard, feeling the rough fabric of her blouse, my knuckles white. "Liar," I spat. "You're lying right now. I saw the messages. How long has this been going on?" She broke down then, tears streaming, but it was too late. The damage was done. The trust was shattered. I knew then and there everything had changed. That revelation set off a chain reaction inside me. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. My head kept replaying that night over and over like a bad movie I couldn't turn off. I started noticing all the little things. How she'd been acting distant for weeks, how she'd avoid my eyes, the way she'd slip her phone away when I entered the room. Red flags, I guess, but I dismissed them. Now they all made sense. I'd missed the signs, blinded by love or maybe just willful ignorance. Now I was spiraling, trying to hold onto my sanity as my world crumbled around me. The worst part. I couldn't tell anyone, not yet. The shame, the anger, they felt like deep wounds I couldn't show. I kept asking myself, how could she do this? How could she lie so easily? I knew I had to do something, but I wasn't sure what. All I knew was I didn't want to let her get away with it. Not without a fight, not without some kind of payback. I started planning that night quietly in the dark. I needed to see where this could go. I needed to understand her, to find the cracks in her story. After all, if she was capable of this, I had to be ready for whatever came next. For now I kept my cool, but inside a storm was brewing. I could feel it. I was only beginning to see the pieces of what had happened, and I knew deep down that this wasn't over, not by a long shot. I looked at her, sitting there crying, and I knew one thing for sure. When I was ready, the game would change, and she'd regret ever crossing me. That night I couldn't sleep. My mind kept circling around her lies, the way her voice shook when she tried to deny everything. The worst part was that I still loved her, or at least I wanted to. That love was a heavy chain that made my stomach churn. I kept thinking about what her betrayal meant for us, for me. I had to do something, not just to find out the truth, but to make her feel what she'd done. The morning after, I started paying close attention. I watched her move around the room, her nervous glances, her subtle hesitation whenever she thought I wasn't looking. I noticed her phone sitting on the nightstand, face down, as if she was trying to hide something. I felt that familiar surge of hostility, but I kept my face calm. No barking, no accusations, yet I knew enough to wait. I spent the next couple of days gathering evidence, just bits at a time. I didn't want to come across as paranoid, but deep down I knew I had to be thorough. I checked her social media, looked through her emails, and downloaded a few apps I knew she used. I even went as far as tracking her location, just a little, to see where she went when she said she was out shopping or at the spa. Nothing too obvious, just enough to confirm my suspicions. Every step was deliberate. I was trying to build a picture, a clear outline of her lies. One afternoon, she left her phone unattended in the living room. I saw my chance. I quietly grabbed it, not to invade her privacy, but to see if there was anything I missed. Her messages were mostly innocent, but I found a few texts with him, more recent ones, full of flirtation and promises. My stomach clenched, but I kept my face blank. I had what I needed. The evidence was undeniable now. That night I sat in the dark holding her phone, the screen casting a faint glow on my face. I thought about her, how she'd lied to me for months, maybe longer. I didn't want to just confront her outright. I wanted to make her realize she couldn't hide from me anymore. That's when the plan started to take shape. I knew I had to be clever. I couldn't just blow up her world with accusations. She'd likely deny everything, spin stories, or worse, turn the blame on me. Instead, I decided I'd gather more proof, and then at the right moment reveal everything in a way that left her no room to deny. I wanted her to see me as the one holding the power, the one who finally uncovered her treachery. Over the next few days, I played it cool. I acted normal, even friendly. Inside, I was boiling, but outwardly, I was the calm before the storm. I kept rehearsing what I'd say when I confronted her. I wanted her to feel vulnerable, to see that I was in control now. That's what revenge is about, after all, making someone regret their choices, not just punish them. It wasn't just about anger. It was about justice. I had to make her understand she had crossed a line I couldn't forgive. My trust was broken, and I wasn't going to let her get away with it without consequences. I'd spent those days secretly planning, waiting for the right moment to strike. And then I found it. A way to turn the tables completely. The perfect move. I knew what I had to do next. The pieces were coming together, and I could feel the shift in the air. It was only a matter of time before she'd realize she was no longer in control. The game was about to change, and I was ready to play it all the way to the end. The day I decided to execute my plan, I felt a weird mix of calm and adrenaline. It's strange how, when your world shatters, your mind starts rewiring itself, focusing on the one thing that can restore some semblance of control. I knew I had enough evidence now. The texts, her evasions, the subtle changes in her behavior. The moment was coming, and I wanted it to be perfect. That evening, I acted like everything was normal. We sat on the balcony of that hotel room, the ocean roaring in the background. She was trying to act casual, but I could tell her nerves were on edge. I kept my voice light, even sweet. "You've been acting strange lately," I said, watching her carefully. "What's going on?" She hesitated, then shrugged. "Nothing really, just stressed. Work, travel, all that stuff." She looked away, but I caught the flicker of guilt in her eyes. That's when I pulled out the phone I'd been secretly saving everything to. I placed it on the table between us deliberately. "Look," I said, voice steady but edged with cold. "I found these." I slid her phone across the table, screen visible. "Your messages with him, I think you need to explain yourself." Her eyes widened and her breath hitched. I saw her panic, the way her lips trembled. She tried to reach for the phone, but I held up a hand. "No, I want to hear it from you. Why? How long has this been going on?" She looked at the phone, then down at her lap, biting her lip. Her voice was barely a whisper. "It was a mistake." It didn't mean anything. I was just confused. I cut her off sharply. "That's bullshit. You lied to me for months, lied right in my face. How could you do this to us, to me?" She started crying then, tears streaming down her face, but I didn't feel anything, just a cold, hard resolve. I wanted her to see what she'd lost. "You've been my wife," I said, voice low but firm. "And now I see I never really knew you, so tell me what's next." Her voice cracked. "Please, I'm sorry. I didn't mean for it to happen. I loved you, I do." "Sorry?" I scoffed. "Sorry isn't enough. Sorry doesn't fix this. You crossed a line, and I'm done pretending it didn't happen." I paused, my stomach tightening. "But I'm not just going to walk away. I have a plan, a way to make sure you regret every second of this." Her eyes widened in disbelief, a flicker of hope mixed with fear. "What are you talking about?" "You'll see," I said, voice cold. "Soon enough. Just know that I'm not going to let this slide. Not without consequences." Over the next few days, I started putting my plan into motion. I played the perfect husband, calm, caring, understanding on the surface. But inside, I was mapping out everything. How to make her feel vulnerable, how to make her realize that her lies had consequences. I kept her close, watching every move, waiting for the right moment to strike. I knew I had her cornered. She thought she was clever, hiding her affair behind lies, but I was about to prove her wrong. I kept reminding myself, this isn't just about revenge. It's about reclaiming what's mine, about making her understand that betrayal comes with a price. The game was just beginning, and I was determined to win it. The day I finally decided to execute the next part of my plan, I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. It was a strange mix of anticipation and disgust. I'd spent so much time waiting and watching, I almost felt like an outsider, watching her live her life while I was stuck in this fog of betrayal. But now, I knew what had to be done. It was time to take control. That morning, I got up early. I wanted everything to be perfect, precise, deliberate. I made sure my phone was fully charged, my plan clear in my mind. The key was to catch her off guard, to make her realize she wasn't in control anymore. I wanted her to feel vulnerable, exposed, the same way I had that night I found the text. I waited until she was in the shower before I moved. Her phone lay on the nightstand, silent. I slipped out of bed quietly, my heartbeat hammering. I grabbed her phone, unlocked it, and started drafting a message to send to him. A message that would shock her, make her feel cornered. The words formed easily. It's over. I know everything. Don't come near her again. I hesitated for a second. Part of me wanted to be merciful, to just walk away and let her go. But I knew better. I wanted her to feel the sting of betrayal, the weight of her lies. I wanted her to understand that I was no longer the naive fool she thought I was. I pressed send, then slipped her phone back where it was. When she emerged from the shower, her hair damp and her face still. Fresh with soap, I looked at her with a calm that was all the more unsettling. She sensed something was different. Her eyes flickered with uncertainty, guilty, maybe, or afraid. "You've been texting him again," I said softly. I knew it. I couldn't stay quiet anymore. I want you to understand something. I took a step closer, feeling the tension ignite between us. "You've crossed so many lines, and now I'm done pretending I don't see it." She looked down, trembling. "I didn't mean for it to get this far," she whispered. "I love you, please. Love." I cut her off sharply, voice icy. "Love doesn't cheat, doesn't lie. Love doesn't destroy someone's trust. You want to talk about love, then why did you hide this? Why did you lie?" Her tears spilled over again. She tried to speak, but no words came. That's when I knew I had her exactly where I wanted her, helpless, exposed, vulnerable. "You think you can just apologize and it will be okay?" I asked. "No. Not anymore. This isn't just about her cheating. This is about respect, trust, and you threw it all away, so here's what's going to happen next." I reached into my pocket, pulling out a small envelope I'd prepared earlier. Inside was a set of keys to the house, her car, everything that gave her a sense of security. I handed it to her slowly. "Here, your things, take what you want, you're leaving today." Her eyes widened in shock. "You can't be serious." "Oh, I am," I said, voice steady. "You get to walk out that door knowing you lost everything because you couldn't keep your promises. Because you thought you could cheat and lie without consequences. That's how this ends." She clutched the keys, trembling. "Please don't do this, we can fix it." "I don't think so," I said, turning away. "This is the only way you'll learn. You want to cheat and lie. I'll give you what you want alone, with nothing left to hide behind." I headed to the door, the weight of her gaze burning into my back. My hands were clenched, my jaw tight. I knew I'd crossed a line, but I didn't care. I had to reclaim my dignity, my life. And if she didn't want to be part of it, she could walk away. As I handed her the keys, I felt something cool and final settle inside me. This wasn't just revenge, it was survival. I'd take back what was mine, and she'd have to face the consequences of her betrayal. When the door finally closed behind her, I took a deep breath. My stomach was clenched, but I felt a strange sense of relief. I had done what I needed to do. That's when I realized the real work was just beginning. The silence after she left was deafening. I stood in the doorway, watching her walk away with that empty look in her eyes, clutching the keys like they were some kind of twisted trophy. My muscles felt tight, my heart pounding harder than it had in days. I wasn't sure if it was relief or rage, but I knew I'd finally taken control. Still, I couldn't shake the sick feeling in my stomach, the sense that I'd crossed some invisible line I'd never come back from. I didn't linger long in that apartment. I packed a small bag with a few essentials, clothes, my documents, and left everything else behind. I needed space, clarity. I didn't want to waste time dwelling on what I'd lost. Instead, I focused on what I'd gained, a shot at reclaiming myself. The drive away was long and quiet. The car's engine hummed steadily, but my mind was anything but calm. I kept replaying her face as she left, the way her shoulders sagged, the way her hands trembled. I wasn't angry, at least not only angry. There was a strange sense of finality, like I had finally closed a chapter I'd been stuck in for too long. Once I found a cheap motel, I checked in and sat on the edge of the bed. My phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. I hesitated, then opened it with a sense of dread. It was him, her lover. A simple message. "You won." That was it, just those 2 words. I felt the anger flare, but I let it simmer. This wasn't about him anymore. It was about me and what I was going to do next. I decided to hit him where it hurt, without crossing into anything violent or overtly destructive. I knew that kind of revenge would only make me feel worse afterward. Instead, I sent him a message, carefully crafted. "Enjoy the aftermath. You got what you wanted, but you'll regret it soon enough." It was cryptic, a warning hidden in plain sight. I knew he'd get the message. That night, lying on the motel bed, I felt a strange mix of exhaustion and clarity. I'd finally taken control of my life, but I also knew this wasn't the end. It's funny how betrayal can turn everything inside out, how it forces you to look at yourself differently. I'd always believed in love and trust, but now I saw how fragile it all was. I stayed awake for a long time, listening to the distant sounds of traffic and the occasional siren. My stomach was tight, but my mind was sharp. I told myself I'd never let anyone do this to me again, that I'd rebuild stronger than before, or at least that I'd try. The pain was still there, but so was a quiet resolve. Later, I took out my phone and made a decision. I'd file for divorce. I didn't want her to have any more control over my life. I'd start over completely. I'd find my own happiness, away from the wreckage she'd left behind. That was the real revenge, walking away with my dignity intact. The next step was clear. I'd gather all the evidence I needed for the divorce papers, then go see a lawyer. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I also knew I couldn't stay in that toxic place anymore. I was done, that's all there was to it. When I finally closed my eyes, I felt a strange sense of peace. It wasn't total, not yet, but I'd taken the first step. I'd broken free from her lies, her betrayal, her control. And I was determined to rebuild my life on my own terms. That night, I lay there thinking about what I'd tell her when she called, what I'd say when I handed over the keys for good. I knew I'd be cold, decisive. No more tears, no more excuses, just the truth. And the truth was, I was done. The morning after, I woke up feeling lighter, like I'd finally taken a deep breath after holding it in for too long. I knew what I had to do. No more messing around, no more second guessing. Today was the day I closed that chapter for good. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the empty space where she'd once stood, feeling the weight of everything, the betrayal, the heartbreak, the rage, all slowly turning into something sharper, clarity. First, I took out the divorce papers I'd printed the night before. They were simple, straightforward, just what I needed. I signed my name, then carefully placed them in an envelope. I slipped an extra note inside, just a few words. "Goodbye and don't come back." It felt satisfyingly final. I knew she'd get it when she saw it. Next, I grabbed the keys she had left behind. I didn't hesitate. I walked to her car, unlocked it, and placed the keys on the dashboard. My fingers trembled slightly, but my voice was steady as I spoke aloud. "You wanted to leave, so go. I won't be waiting anymore." I closed the door gently, then turned around and headed to the phone I'd kept with me. I dialed the lawyer's number, someone I'd researched carefully. When she picked up, I explained everything briefly: the betrayal, the evidence, the decision to divorce. She listened patiently, then promised to prepare everything by the end of the day. I felt a small flicker of hope. This was the end of her control over me. I'd finally reclaimed my life. Afterward, I went to a quiet park nearby. I sat on a worn bench, watching people walk by, feeling the warm sun on my face. My stomach was still tight, but inside I felt an odd sense of peace, like I'd finally cleaned out a room I'd avoided for years. I thought about all the nights I'd spent trying to fix something broken, and now I knew I'd done the right thing. I pulled out my phone and sent her a message. Short and simple. "The keys, the papers, everything's done. It's over." I pressed send and knew it was the last piece of the puzzle. No more waiting, no more pretending. I was free. A moment later, my phone buzzed. It was a reply from her, an apology maybe, or a desperate plea. Honestly, I didn't care anymore. I looked away from the screen and took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of fresh air, feeling the weight lift from my shoulders. In that quiet moment, I realized something important. Betrayal cuts deep, but it also forces you to rediscover who you really are. I'd been broken, yes, but I was stronger now. I'd taken everything she threw at me and turned it into my own liberation. The pain was still there, but it no longer defined me. I stood up, brushed off my clothes, and started walking toward my future. I didn't know exactly what it held, but I knew it would be better, because I wasn't going to let her or anyone else take my dignity again. I'd rebuild from the ground up with nothing but my own resolve. As I left that park behind, I felt a small smile creeping onto my face. I finally understood that sometimes the only way forward is to let go of what's holding you back. And today, I was finally doing just that, free from her lies, her betrayal, her grip. And honestly, it felt damn good.